Hey viewers, my name is Kara. This is the third little mini video in my series about my witch camp experiences, and I actually had already recorded this video once, but now that I've gotten back from my second reclaiming experience from the leadership skills workshop that I did this past weekend of the time that I'm recording this, I have learned something new that makes me want to change some of what I said. So the topic for this little mini video is about experiencing the different energies in different spaces within ritual, within sacred space, within your circle, etc. I say circle because for some people it may not be a circle or a sphere, but within your sacred space, experiencing the different energy in different locations. And the reason I wanted to redo this is because over the weekend, we talked a bit about energy raising in sacred space and that kind of place within ritual that is for energy raising. And what was pointed out to me is that the way that it's done in reclaiming ritual is different than it's done in other traditions. There's more of an emphasis placed on energy raising in these rituals typically, and once that was said out loud, I started thinking about all the other group rituals that I've been a part of, both casual small group rituals, private, and then also public rituals that were bigger but are sort of created to fit a wider audience because they are public rituals. And I started thinking, wow, yeah, the way that energy is raised is very different. So I just wanted to approach this topic with that in mind and say that if this information can apply to the types of rituals that you do at home or the type of rituals that you attend, if it applies to your situation, I think this would be a cool thing to try out, an interesting exercise to do. But if not, it may just be that energy raising has a different place within your practice and your path. So I wanted to make sure that I came at it from a different approach instead of just thinking like, oh, next time you're in a ritual that does this, because you may not be. So what I mean by energy in different ritual spaces, one of the things that we worked on in the elements path, which I took, which went through different elements, we focused on a different classical element every day. Fire day, we worked with energy work and energy raising and stuff like that. And part of the homework challenge from my teachers was to observe throughout the rest of the week in the group rituals what the energy is like in different spaces. And I was just sitting here getting ready for this video right now when I noticed I have this silly little rubber stamp like sticker thing that actually perfectly illustrates what I'm going to say. So I want to use this as a visual aid. This funky little thing with little critters explains what I mean. So when you have a sacred space or a circle that's been cast, there's kind of three main areas to it that I could think of. There's being really, really close to the center, where if you're using a cone of power and your energy raising is going into a cone of power to then be released, the cone of power tends to happen in the center, right? It all comes from the middle and is released. Then there's also all the way on the edges of the sacred space, near your boundary, where your sacred space then ends and becomes unconsecrated space, which is still sacred and good, especially if you believe that everything is sacred and the sacred is everywhere. But beyond your defined sacred space that you're using as your container for your energy. And then your middle-ish area is kind of like you're in the middle. You're not all the way on the edges, but you're not right up in the middle. Now, in most public rituals and even little rituals that I've been to, if there are drummers, there are typically people drumming all the way in the center of the circle. If there is anything like a high priestess, high priest type position, those people, those roles tend to be around the center. And different traditions might have different people holding the boundaries, things like that. But even if you don't have that, there's just kind of these three basic areas. Now, for the most part, in rituals during witch camp, for the first couple of days, I found myself kind of in that middle ground. I wanted to be in there in the middle, part of the energy, getting as close as I could, but it wasn't really important to me to kind of elbow my way to be right in the center. And I just figured, okay, this is awesome, I'm feeling it, I'm in the energy, it's cool. But when we got that challenge and that homework assignment to experience it in different ways, that evening I actually invoked fire for the whole camp ritual that evening, and then found myself at the outside edges of the ritual space. And I thought, oh, what a perfect opportunity to experience this energy this way. So that was a really unique experience for me because I had never been in a big group ritual where it was really taken time to include and make sure you include the energy of the people who decide to just hang out on the periphery and hang out at the edges. They might be sitting down in chairs, things like that. The people who don't choose to be moving around, dancing, anything like that really actively in the center. It was the first time I had been part of rituals where those people's energy was really brought in a conscious and mindful and purposeful way. So part of what the people who were on the boundary area, that outer circle, which is dragonflies here, were doing was making sure that those people's energy was brought in. So for example, if there were things where we were chanting or toning different words and phrases, I was noticing other people who were on the edges of the circle going over to those people who were sitting down, listening to what they were singing, and then bringing that back into the center and singing their words to the center to really bring that energy in from the edges in. And also, we tended to just move constantly around the edges to kind of help the energy build up and bring it in, focus toward the center, and help it get going. Like when you make a little mini tornado in a soda pop bottle, a 2-liter bottle here in the States. You know what I mean? You ever did that little experiment where you like spin a bottle or spin a glass around and you see this spin? It's kind of like what you're doing. Or as one of my teachers used the image multiple times of cotton candy, when you like spin it around and continue to wrap up the cotton candy threads. So that's kind of what it was like on the outside. And what I noticed experience-wise, energy-wise for me, was that after that ritual, I felt much less drained and I was actually more relaxed because I wasn't expending as much of my own energy being on the edges. I was more concentrating on coalescing everyone else's energy and helping it to ramp up, but I wasn't really expending a lot of my own energy. The next night or so, I think there were a couple other nights throughout the rest of the week where I found myself in the center of the circle, or if there was an opportunity to move closer to the center, I tried to do that because I hadn't experienced that yet. And the experience of being in the center of the circle, again, we mostly had drummers in that area, really keeping the heartbeat, ramping up the energy, just kind of riding with the flow of energy, whatever it was. The experience of being up there in the center, like right near the sound or right near the fire, depending on what the ritual setup was, there wasn't always a fire. It was like being in the center of a singing bowl is what I kept feeling like. It was like just being in the center with all that resonance and feeling all the energy from around you coming in toward the center, hearing everyone's voices in a way that you don't experience it being on the edges or even being in the middle of it, being part of that, but being in the center, being in the eye of the storm, or like I felt like in the center of a singing bowl. It was very cool, and I started to really understand what I had been observing throughout the years whenever I go to other rituals where it seems like, you know, there is any amount of energy raising, even if it's a small thing, where someone in the center seems to be kind of aware of what's going on and like whether the energy is dragging, whether the energy is going faster than what you want it to be. I started getting a sense of what I had been observing. So for example, when I watched some of the teachers who were in the center, I could see them doing things, and I thought like, okay, yeah, like that's what they're doing, but I didn't know why. I didn't really put much thought into it. But when I was in the center, I could really feel it, and there was more of a desire and more of a pull to help the energy move in the way that it was going, you know? So it was very cool because I was able to be like, oh, okay, yeah, now I kind of get it. I get what is going on in the center of the circle and what it feels like. And when you can tell that like, oh, okay, the energy is really building up and now it's kind of dropping back down, do we want to help it to push right back up, or do we want to let it even out for a minute before we bring it back up? And just making those decisions and feeling out what the group needs and where the group is heading was very cool. And that's not something that I would have experienced had my teachers not challenged me to figure, and the whole class, the whole path group, to really try and experience energy at those different levels. I may have always found myself in that center group, like being as close as I can, but not really caring about super like being close to the center, like just letting other people go where they were gonna go kind of thing. So very cool assignment, teachers. I love you. You know that. Very cool. Very cool. So I don't know if that necessarily applies to everyone's experiences and the traditions that you are a part of. I know I have definitely been to some rituals where the energy raising was not like that. Where it was something simpler, it wasn't as exuberant, or really looking back on it, it just wasn't as big of a part of the ritual. Like, you would do it, and it would be like part of the magic working, but it was never the focus. It wasn't the sole, like, big working that you were doing. So now I have learned that, like, energy raising in itself has different roles and different paths and different practices. So that's very cool. If you would like to share with the class what role energy raising plays in your path, if you have been part of group rituals, public rituals, private rituals, how that kind of experience differs, whether you have noticed differences in different areas, where you tend to find yourself, if you're the kind of person who likes to be right up in the center, if you tend to hang back, what that does for you, whether it depends on the day. Sometimes if you're feeling like you don't want to expend as much energy, you might be on the outer circle. If you, on the other hand, feel like you really need to absorb a lot of energy, you might want to go toward the center. So I think it could really depend, and just keeping that in mind as something that you can do for yourself too, depending on what you need and what you have to give and what you want to give to the ritual. Very cool, very cool. So I could probably go on about this, but I'll probably repeat even more than I already have, so I'll just end here, and I will say that I now am remembering to put in the description a link to witchcamp.org. Witch camps are week-long intensives in the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft. So I keep saying this, and I keep talking about witch camp, and a lot of you who are watching this, like whatever the one video is for the first time, you haven't seen all the previous videos that I've made about witch camp. They are all in a playlist, so please check that out to watch all of the things, because there is a video that I did called about Witch Camp Before I Go, where I really tried to explain kind of what the format of Witch Camp is, where it comes from, and that was all before I actually attended one. And now this stuff is more about my personal experience. But it is part of the reclaiming tradition, so that may or may not be something you're interested in. It has to do with the books that Starhawk has written, fairy tradition, stuff like that. So I will put a link to witchcamp.org, which should also bring you to information about reclaiming and also about witch camps, because there's not just one. They're in all over the United States and in Europe and in Australia. So I did want to point that out, because it occurred to me that people aren't seeing all the videos. You're just kind of tuning in and being like, what is this? I didn't know this existed. What is this? And so that's what it is. So I will remember to put that link there. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. There's going to be 6 of these little mini topic videos. I know they're long, but I still consider them mini topics because they're more focused. The next one is going to be about my connection to the elements and how I kind of explored that in the elements path that I took at camp. So I'll see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.